got a really sort of action-packed lineup for you here. We've got people from the world of publishing. We've got people from the world of outdoor advertising, major brands like Specsavers and Brompton Bicycles and things like that. But we start today's session with a discussion about effectiveness, which again has been a theme of the last couple of days, but sort of turning all this chat about attention into action and moving beyond just one-off tests here or there to start using the sort of slightly more grown-up language of media mix modeling and econometrics. Real marketers know that marketing takes place over time and across media and involves hundreds of different touch points. And so you can't just measure one thing, you have to measure the symphony of different activities that we do as marketers. And doing that is very, very complicated, and it's something that many digital marketers don't necessarily understand has already been cracked. This has been, this marketing effectiveness stuff people have been talking about and doing for decades, and it might be only now that digital marketers are sort of catching up with that understanding. But we have three leaders in the field of marketing effectiveness to talk about exactly this. So a warm hand welcome to Rachel Moss from Allwyn, Peter Grant from Boots, and Dan Mogridge from Vodafone. Guys.
Oh.
I think, yes, very good. Thank you. Guys, thank you very much for coming and kicking off the afternoon's session. Many people in the audience will be aware of marketing effectiveness in general, but many people and actually have a very hazy view. How did you get into this? What do you do, and how did you get into this role? Rachel, do you want to start?
Hi everyone, I'm Head of Marketing Strategy at Allwyn, who is the new operator of the National Lottery. Tonight's Wednesday, go buy your lotto tickets, guys. And I guess I've got into marketing effectiveness because for me, the job of the marketeer in the business is to find what's going on for the customer, what does the business need, and create value. And actually, effectiveness is the conversation that makes your CFO the happiest in the room.
Hi, so I'm Peter, and I'm the Head of Media Effectiveness at Boots. Crikey, I've only been doing this about 6 years, so it's a bit of a
mere
stretch.
6 years.
Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch to call me an expert. My journey started in the supply chain, right at the other end on the supply side of the business. Then I got into forecasting, did a bit of commercial stuff while I was at Mars for 10 years or so. Got quite good at that, and then they give you other stuff to do, and it was that other stuff that first got me into media effectiveness. I was evaluating in-store shopper marketing, and everything then, I guess, cascaded from there, and I started working at Boots about 6 years ago, and I often describe it as not being my my first love, but it is my true love.
Very good. Well, thank you very much.
Lovely.
And Dan, what do you do at Vodafone, and how did you end up doing it?
So hi everyone, I'm Dan Mogridge from Vodafone, where I'm a media lead. I've been at Vodafone for 6 years. Been in media for about 23, I think. I've been on the agency side and also done some of the sales side. And obviously media effectiveness is massive for us at Vodafone. We're very lucky. We have quite big budgets. And we sort of really got into sort of effectiveness and MMM about 5 years ago, I'd say, and we've been on a journey since then. And why did we get into it? It's because we were desperately trying to wean our business off last-click metrics. We still haven't quite done it. The finance people still love them, but we keep banging the effectiveness drum and MMM, and I'm not going to stop.
Right, very good. Now, all three of you have been using attention metrics in some way, shape, or form within the within concept of marketing effectiveness and media evaluation or marketing effectiveness. I mean, Rachel, do you want to start? What have you been doing to link attention metrics to outcomes and effectiveness?
So I think it's really interesting because if you talk to media people, they think about attention just about the media placement. If you talk to people who create advertising, they talk about attention. And I think for me, attention is both how good the creative is and where you put it. And it goes back to when I was ABM many, many moons ago on Angel Delight. When you were looking at creative, the way I was taught to look at advertising is, does it grab your attention? Like, what's your human reaction? Is it well branded enough? And does it communicate the message that you need the customer to see? And so actually, whilst I came at it from an advertising perspective, where it really comes into its own is as we've gone away from just buying TV, press and radio if you're lucky, to this plethora of media, that placement becomes so much more important. And equally, when we talk about the ROIs, I think lots of people out here, out of home never does well in econometrics, but it does grab people's attention. And actually it allows you to create a conversation that shows that all of your media creates, like you were saying, almost an orchestra of effectiveness that gets your consumer to ultimately do what you want them to do, which is buy the thing.
To make sure we just go round and round, I'll go to Dan next. Exactly. So, what have you been doing to actually? How do you assess the effectiveness of this stuff? What is it? Is it experiments, or is it MMM, or?
Yeah, we're very led by MMM, and especially I think what's good about that is it gets you thinking in the longer term as well as the short term, because it can be very easy just to do an A/B test, find something out, then kind of forget about it. It's more like test and burn than test and learn. So there's a lot of that. Which
TM though, that's great.
Yeah, which we do a lot and we're very guilty of. So we try and use it to take a bit of a longer term view of how our marketing is working, and also sort of, as Rachel was saying, how they're all working together, because it's very easy, especially with being so many media channels and so many people you've got to speak to get a plan live, that everyone's just thinking about their own thing, which is fine. You're an expert. We want the experts to do it, but you sort of need a unifying thing over the top to make sure it does work together. Sort of the sum of the parts is greater than the individual bits.
Yeah. How about you, Pete? How are you linking attention to outcomes then? Is it an experimental approach, or are you feeding the data into econometric models, or is it just for planning? I know that you've got an interesting attentive reach planning tool with Audience Project.
Yeah, so we've used market mix modelling now for about 15 years, long before I joined Boots. And you made some comments in the introduction, Mike, where you described it as being a bit like an orchestra or a symphony. And if you think about it like that, then it's not just a trite thing to say, it's a very true thing to say. If you were to take any individual element of that orchestra out and try to optimize that, where would it take you? You would actually be creating a worse thing than you began with. So, this idea that you can parse up the world into increasingly small bits and optimize each and every bit, and you will inevitably get a masterpiece, is just nonsense. Yeah. You have to be able to look at the overall impact of what you're doing, and we talk about media mix almost as though in a lazy kind of way, but it's super, super important. So having that top-down view of overall effectiveness, and effectiveness is commercial returns, of course. It's nothing else. We all work for commercial businesses, so don't lose sight of that. That's what's really important to us. And then you start to go down and you start to try to understand what some of the levers might be. And attention then pops up, as does creative, as does optimal reach and frequency, and all of these really interesting things. But in truth, many of these things aren't proven yet. There's huge attempts in the industry to codify this stuff, and that's ongoing. But we're not there yet in truth. So the work we're doing with Lumen is really very much an unintegrated approach to see what we can learn from the attention metrics.
I was going to say, I think sometimes you can over-codify. I think we can sometimes become so reliant on all the evidence. And I'd say, even for us at Allwyn, we spend an awful lot of money on media, but media mix modelling is an indulgence for us, because we have so much going on all the time that you could have to be choiceful about when you use it. So there's a lot of conversation in our business about, well, what are our leading metrics? How do we show the business that what we are doing is good enough to get the outcomes? And I think that's where the conversation around attention, yes, we can see it, the advertising is good enough, all of the inputs were good enough, and if they're good enough, then the consideration, awareness should shift, and if that shifts, then we should get the playership and the purchase that we need.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Your own experience of working with attention metrics, it's a bit of a journey for everyone. Some people have been doing it for ages, other people are starting out. But what have you learned? What have you, let's start with Rachel again. What have you learned, how has it been useful for you from an effectiveness point of view?
So from effectiveness, I think it helps you understand what good looks like, more from actually the creative, so placement, really, really important. But, all of this clever stuff, humans connect with humans, and I think you've seen it in your work, you certainly in the study we did with you, point of sale is brilliant at some points, but actually human faces, people love people, and you get a better reaction from that connection, and just helps you optimize where you should go that bit further from the kind of basic buy now comms to something a bit more engaging and spend a bit more money on the creative. When is it worth it?
This is a sophisticated, often when you get to talk to marketing mix modeling people, it's all about the media all the time, and you went straight to the creative. This is very... how about you, Pete? Where is the value of this? Is it about reducing waste, or is it about better placements or planning, or how are you finding it useful?
Well, I think if we can get it right, and I don't think we're there yet. I don't think anybody's there. Then it could be really powerful, because just like creative, it's obvious that something that grabs your attention is going to work better than something that doesn't grab your attention. So what we're doing with you guys at the moment is we're right in the middle of doing this now. So we're running our summer campaign, and we're having 2 stand-ups a week with the Lumen guys and the Essence Mediacom guys, and we're looking at what the attention scores look like whilst in flight, and we're looking at what the CPMs are telling us, and we're going, right, okay, there's a difference there. Why might there be a difference? Are we brave enough to optimize towards attention or not? And if not, why not? And we're keeping track of the changes that we make, so that further down the road, if there is a ripple in performance, and it is still quite manual at the moment, but if there is a ripple in performance through the Econometrics, then we'll see it.
Yeah.
And if that gives us some clues as to where to dig next, then great stuff.
Yeah. How about you, Dan?
I still think I'm learning about attention, but it's actually when this whole attention debate first started, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it was actually a bit of quite a big moment, because sort of when you step back from it, you go, what am I doing? Like, we're doing all this stuff, and now we're having to talk about whether people are paying attention to it. We spend hours, weeks, months putting together media plans and brand campaigns, and then it turns out no one's looking at it. It's quite a big moment when you realise that. And I think
it's not no one's looking at it.
well,
no,
not as many
these
people are, but not as many
most
people as you would imagine. So I think it was a great thing for us to be talking about, and in some ways I think think about attention to take a step back from how you're planning and what you're thinking about. Rachel's exactly right. We need to bring creative back to everything we do and bring those two worlds back together, because ultimately media's great at getting things in front of people, but it's got to be a brilliant ad as well. And I think we need to bring those worlds back together and get creativity back in media planning as much as creative.
And I think it's so important that the creative agency and the media agency work hand in hand with the client. That is when the magic happens. It doesn't happen when you're doing side briefings off on here. You all have to be in the room, and that's when you get the wins.
Yeah. Which makes you think then, so what are the frustrations then? Peter, you're saying that you at the beginning of not beginning of this journey, but still taking a step-by-step approach to it. Whereas other people are buying on the basis of attention right now, and different people are working in different ways. But that sort of bespeaks that there's some worries about things, or sensitivities, or frustrations. So, guys, Dan, what are the frustrations you've had?
One of my frustrations is probably is ad tech, to be honest, which is probably not a popular thing to say here, because they jump on these things, and you can now optimize to attention. And I think once a KPI becomes a target, it's no longer a good one anymore. For a host of reasons, like you can game the system, and you're starting to think about the wrong things. You're not thinking about the creative. You're just thinking about how can I log on today and make sure that I've hit 80% attention. It's not going to work. And it's like I was saying before. I think we need to not necessarily get focused on optimizing campaigns to the nth degree for attention. It should be something that you think about as part of the whole broader campaign that you're putting together.
How about you, Rachel?
I think we can sometimes, as marketeers, get carried away by the language, and we hone in on attention. And yes, it is important. But to be honest, some of the people sitting around the boardroom, frankly, do not give a shit about some of the marketing stuff. They just want to see the results. So actually, how do you tell the stories about what you're doing in a way that matters to your audience so that you're delivering value? And that's what we have to keep focusing on, is attention is something that's important to us. To your point, do we need to have it as a KPI, or do we need to be conscious of it and making sure that it's part of our mix when we're delivering the business outcomes that they're looking for?
But Pete, I mean, it sounds like from both these answers, it's about starting with the end in mind and working back for that. Sort of, all of these things are ingredients in. And actually, I was just thinking, this symphony or orchestra thing. Do you know the actual real story of where the marketing mix model thing comes from? It was the guy who came up with the concept of it at Harvard University in the 30s thought of it as a cocktail mix. And you have different strengths of, and he thought that was a far more glamorous. As a statistician, you try and make your stuff sexy. Thinking of marketing mix models as cocktails is that's the language that he wanted to get across. But I suppose in that sense, the opportunity, the end point of a good cocktail is a good time and a bit of a buzz. The ingredients that get you there are all important, but not as important as the end in mind. Is that's certainly what I've seen working with you at Boots, that you guys always start like, let's think about what we want to achieve, and then we can then decompose or deconstruct how it is that we achieve that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, we all think in hierarchies, and you've got to make sure that at the very pinnacle of your hierarchy of measurement, you've got that which is most valuable to you as a business, and that's got to talk to commercial outcomes. And if you don't believe that, then try having a conversation with your CFO about unlocking £1 million. And when he says, well, what am I going to get back? And you say, 3 million clicks. See how long that conversation lasts. He doesn't want to hear that. He doesn't care about that. I think what's really difficult in our world as it's become digitized and codified is we have generations of people, and there'll be many in this audience today, that are coming up through this disconnected, decontextualized world, and I think that's a real problem, because we all have to become experts in our own area, but we've become increasingly untethered from the broader context, the thing that matters most, and in the absence of that, you start to lose purpose and all that kind of stuff. So, and you question what you're doing. So, take a step back, zoom out, and always remember, wherever you are, whatever you're measuring, it has to exist somewhere within a pyramid of values, and then behave in accordance to wherever that is. But it's not going to be at the top in a commercial organisation unless it's a commercial outcome.
And I'm just building on that point. You talk about the outcome, the end game. For me, you have to make sure it starts with the consumer insight, because if you don't have the insight, you won't have the relevance, you won't place it in the right place, you won't grab the attention if you're not starting with the customer at its heart. You know, that's what drives the business.
Well, what a fantastic place to end on. I was going to ask the team about what their last bits of advice for people. We seem to have got 3 very good learnings from there. Guys, thank you very much for your time. I know that many of you will have questions for the guys. They've all kindly said that they'll be standing over by the System 1 thing. I'm sure you can mob them afterwards and ask any more detailed questions.
Buy us a cocktail.
But exactly. But do remember, as you start drinking your cocktails today, that the true inspiration of the various cocktails you can get is, of course, econometrics and statistics. Very good. Well, thank you very much, guys. A big hand for Rachel, Pete, and Dan. Thank you.